Hey guys, I'm just it's so still having a pumpkin night, and I decided to want to. Okay, I swear I saw something. This is getting really weird. Hold on, here we go. Um, oh boy, this is getting funny. But anyway, um, okay, some songs here that I wow. Okay, but there's some things that I could improve, then don't hesitate to tell me. Also, I have ADHD, so I'm gonna be moving a lot because I can't really sit still. So, yeah. Anyway, let's begin. Number one is called The Man in the Bunny Costume. When I was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny, one of those terrifying costumes. And what really gets me is I remember smelling the wet hay. When I woke up, I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into our room. They said they would never go through so much trouble. Then my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this happened, said she remembers when the Easter Bunny came into our room and made a remark about the hay smell. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed as a bunny in our room. To make it even stranger, I told the friends I sat with at lunch what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street. She told me one Easter a long time. Uh, she told me one Easter a long time. She looked out her window during the night and saw the Easter bunny standing in her driveway. I had chills. To this day, I am terrified of people in rabbit costumes. Number two is the ghost babysitter. This is gonna be really scary. When my niece was really young, she was in a bouncer at my sister's house. I was house and babysitting. I had left her to go to the kitchen to grab some water. My sister's chocolate labs were probably sniffing and licking her head because I could hear her giggling like she was having a blast. I hadn't noticed how cold it had gotten. Then I heard it, a loud wooden snap, like a thick piece of wood had been snapped in half suddenly or a tree was knocked over. I ran into the room, and what I saw and smelled freaked me out. The dogs were huddled in the corner, whimpering. My niece was just staring at the ceiling corner with wide eyes, and it was cold and smelled like Stetson. And side note, if anybody knows what Stetson is, please comment below because I do not know what Stetson is. Is it some kind of drink? Is it some kind of cologne? So just comment and tell me what Stetson is, please and thank you. I took her and we decided to go to a different room. When my sister finally came home, I told her what happened. She just rolled her eyes and said, "That is Hugh." I was confused. She said Hugh was the previous owner of the house who had died 10 years before his wife sold it. She said he likes to follow my niece around, and you can tell it is him because the dog's freak. It gets cold and smells like cheap cologne. Oh, then Stetson is cologne. Okay. Now I know. I don't believe in that shit, but I do believe that feeling you get in your gut when something doesn't feel right. Number 3 is stranger in the house. And I have lots of burps, so excuse me if I kind of burp in the middle of stuff. I also have really bad heartburn and didn't take my pill today. So, yeah. Number 3 is stranger in the house. In college, I would go home every other weekend to work at the job I had since high school. I would drive directly from campus after my last class on Friday to my job, about an hour. And after my shift was done, I'd go back to my parents' house, which was out in the middle of nowhere. My parents weren't yet home when I got back from work. They often spend their Friday and Saturday evenings drinking, like they were the ones in college. So the house was dark, and since it was mid-fall, so was the yard, save for the yard light. This is getting me so freaked out. I love. Okay. Save for the yard light. I pulled into my normal parking spot, got out of the car, and then turned to open the back door of my car and got my backpack out of the back seat. That's when I noticed that the bathroom light was on. Was that light on when I pulled up? It must have it must have been, right? As I was contemplating the light and reaching for my backpack, there was suddenly a very angry looking old woman standing in the window, staring at me. We're not talking resting bitch face here either. She was pissed off at me, and I knew it. We stood there staring at each other for a good 10 seconds when my parents pulled into the driveway and distracted me from my stare down with the woman in the bathroom. By the time I turned back, the light was still on, but the woman was gone. Sorry, I'm just doing something right now. Oh my. 9 minutes. Number 4 is when the dead walk the halls. Oh my goodness. I used to volunteer at a nursing home where we had several instances where when new residents accurately described former residents down to specific nightgowns or color of glasses who I and the staff knew had died in that room and complain about them coming into the room at night. Then, once I was walking through the hallway and it was normally uncomfortably warm inside, but I felt a chill and goosebumps. One of the CNAs said I had just walked through a ghost. I couldn't get warm again for the rest of the day. There were flickering lights and TVs turning themselves on. Several of the staff were from the same Southeast Asian country, and they were talking about ghosts and disrespect for the dead so much that management had someone come in to do a candlelight ceremony, and this lady with crystals and dreadlocks came in to do a sage brushing. Things calmed down after that. Lights stayed on better, and the residents seemed calmer. That doesn't really seem like a scary story. Well, I'm gonna switch to laying down. Oops. Because my neck is bothering me. Okay. Oh, crying out loud. Okay. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Number 5 is the Phantom hair dryer. I was in my sophomore year of high school. I would usually get ready and then wait for my mother to drive me to school. While she was getting ready, I was just kind of hanging out in the bathroom with her while she was putting on makeup and curling her hair. She looked a little frazzled, and I asked if everything was okay. She told me about a weird occurrence the night before. She told me that she had been woken up at around 2 o'clock by a strange noise. It wasn't super loud, but it was pretty constant. My dad wasn't woken up by it, though it's not surprising as he sleeps like a log. Anyway, she starts looking for the source of the noise. First checking the bathroom attached to their room, but there isn't anything in there. Next, she walks out into the hall and hears the noise from the bathroom nearby. When she walks in, she sees a hairdryer plugged in and turned on, just sitting in the middle of the bath mat on the floor. She thinks it's strange, but there are 4 kids living in the house, and she thought maybe someone had sleepwalked and turned it on. Whatever. She unplugs it and puts it away. She goes back to bed and eventually falls asleep. About an hour later, she wakes up again and hears the same noise. She's kind of pissed off and goes to check it out again, except now the noise is from downstairs. She tracks it down into the guest bathroom in the main entry hall. My parents' house has like 4 bathrooms. She opens the door and again, there's a hairdryer turned on, laying in the middle of the floor. And she's freaked out by this point, but she unplugs it and puts it away. She didn't get a great night's sleep after that. So she's telling me this story, and as soon as she comes to the conclusion, we both just freeze and turn our heads into the walk-in closet off her bathroom. As soon as we look in there, the entire light on the ceiling shatters. Not the light bulb, but the glass cover. It shatters, sending shards of glass everywhere. Well, we both freak and get the heck out. we didn't know what to make of it, but we haven't really had any experiences before or since, and none of my family have experienced anything either. Ah, itchy. I hate allergy season. Okay, number 6. Wait. Oh, don't mind me. My memory is so off that I get confused with how many stories I've done. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so number 6 is the nightmares, and this is a really short story. So I was a caretaker of a small uninhabited island off the coast of Maine, and my girlfriend and I started having synchronized nightmares about things that we had never discussed before. They involved very specific themes, and after months of this happening, we were gifted a history book of the island that had a small chapter in the back that mentioned the exact hauntings. Okay, that was short and to the point, but it doesn't give much detail, so I can't count that as a scary story, but yeah. Anyway, number 7 is this is why the basement is locked. My mother was having dinner at a friend's house. It was a small old cottage that's been around for 100 years. She tries to find the bathroom and pulls on a door that is locked. The friend sees and says, "Sorry, that goes to the basement. The bathroom is over there." Thinking it is odd, my mother asks why the basement door is locked. It's always locked. In fact, I don't even have a key for it. The real estate agent advised me not to go down there as it's not been upgraded like the rest of the cottage. It's little more than a root cellar. When I get tired, I stumble over my words, so I apologize. Fast forward a few weeks when my mother, who works for the police department's community division, is working on a project about the history of the police department in the town. Can't talk when I yawn. An old man comes in with news clippings about various community events, as well as a news clipping from the 50s about a gruesome murder. My mom was a bit taken aback. "Sorry, I forgot those clippings were in here too." "No, I know this address. It's my friend's house. What happened there?" "Oh," said the old man. "Well, that used to be my mother's house. She had been dating this man who was cruel to her, beat her horribly. She tried again and again to break it off with him, but he'd always come back. Finally, my aunt moved in with us, and my mother finally broke up with him. He starts getting emotional. Then, one night, he broke in and tied my mother, aunt, sister, and brother up in the basement. He shot them all in front of my mother. Then, then he shot her and killed himself, leaving a note that she would never leave him again. I was away at college. He started to sob, and that is how my mother's friend learned. She has a haunted quadruple murder suicide scene in her basement. She moved out a year later. Okay, to be honest, that's not really scary, but it's really sad. Like, I can't even count that as a scary story. It's just really sad. Number 8 is The Dying Patient. A good friend of mine while doing his rounds as a young intern. He is now a neurosurgeon. He had just looked in on a dying patient. After making the patient comfortable, he exited the room. Sat on a nearby chair to write his report. After a few minutes, he looked up and saw this patient walking down the hallway. He called to the woman, but there was no response. As he stood up to walk after her, she disappeared. He quickly walked toward the patient's room and saw a light under the door. When he opened the door, it was completely dark in the room. So he turned on the night light, went over to the patient, and felt for her pulse. She had died. He swears to this experience. Okay, moving on, because this is getting to be sad, and I apologize. I was looking for scary stories. Of course, that just doesn't really. There we go. Finally, this just yeah. Is what I saw on the country road. While in university, I loved finding snakes. I was a biology student. So a friend of so a friend from her herpetology club showed me this road that he would cruise for snakes. Cruising is when you drive slowly down old back roads after dark looking for snakes that have slithered onto the warmer road to heat up. The road we took was about 4 miles and had around 4 houses on its entirety. We had taken a few laps on this road, and we were making our final pass. There are 2 houses near the beginning of the road, one at the end and one near the middle. We were getting close to the center house when we see movement on the left side of the road. There are a lot of animals, obviously, on this road, so we aren't surprised to see this. However, what shoots out is this kid, probably around 8 or 9, in torn blue jeans and a ripped dark t-shirt. He, he takes one look at us, and his face is a mix of fear and pain. He looked back really quickly from where he had come out of then booked it across the road. The guy I'm with gets out of the car, chasing to see if he's alright, and I pull the car up to the point where the boy went into the woods. I'm starting to get out of the car when my friend walks quickly back from the trail and just says, "Let's go, now." We hop in the car and tear out of there. He says there is a graveyard about 10 yards into the woods where there are 5 gravestones with the same death date. They all had the same last name, and one was a boy who was 9. We never came back to we never came back the rest of the summer to that road. We usually would go out once or twice a week. The next year, when my friend had graduated, I took my girlfriend out to the road. We had gone early to try to. Oh, I'm itchy everywhere. It's frickin' allergies. We had gone early to try to find different types of snakes. Different snakes. Different snakes tend to move at different points of dusk night. We got to the house near the graveyard, and there's 3 men doing some yard work. I rolled down the window and explained what I was doing, and asked them about the graveyard. Apparently, their dad's brother's family had all died when their space heater caught fire around 20 years ago. I kept pushing and asking about it, and they told me the fireman whoever does it had found all the bodies in the rubble except for the youngest son, but they assumed he was too far burned. I asked if they had a little brother, and the 6 foot 4 feet, 250-pound man said he was the youngest. When I gave the description of the kid I saw, and they all went white. Sorry, this is bad English, so I'm trying my best. And I'm laying down. Ow. Ugh. Sorry about this. Okay. Excuse me. When I give the description of the kid I saw, and they all went white. They all have individually seen the kid I was talking about, and he always runs to the gravesite. I have never been down that road again. Number 9 is called A Helpful Spirit. Oh. Well then. Yeah. Okay, okay, a few weeks after my mom gave birth to me, she went to me in the middle of the night because I was crying. When she went in the room, she saw a dark figure of a man who she thought was my dad holding me, and decided to go back to sleep. In the morning, she thanks my dad for taking care of me. As it turns out, my dad was not even awake then, and nobody else was in the apartment. It gets worse later on in life. Not only me, but my sister, cousins, and friends have all seen it somewhere in our home, all in separate accounts, and we don't normally tell people about it unless they've seen it, and it follows us wherever we move to. And at this point, me and my family have all learned to ignore it, though we all know it's there. Okay, that was hard to read, but that was a short story. Number 10 is The Fan, and it's another short story. These stories are getting to be really short. Okay. My nose was just itchy and I just When I was 12, me and my mom were watching TV in her bedroom. It was one of those really stuffy summer evenings. Stating the obvious, I said aloud, "It is so hot in here." Immediately, the fan that was sitting on the dresser 5 feet away turned on. The switch couldn't really be flipped on by accident. It was pretty sticky and required a little bit of force to go from off to on. I can't really explain how that happened, but I like to think it was a friendly ghost. Oh, my nose. And I'm gonna. No, never mind. Number 11 is crying. In middle school, my friend was in a church youth group, and they often had these overnights at the church that he would invite me to, and they were actually tons of fun. Towards the end of the night, the guy who ran it, he was chill as fuck. The Lord was with that guy. Would let us play manhunt in the entire church area. The place where actual mass was held. Kitchen, rec hall, nursery, etc. We turned literally every light in the whole place. And all we had were tiny flashlights. It was spooky, but so much fun. I swear I'm smelling a skunk. And my window's open too. Yes, I'm fidgeting a lot and I apologize. It's part of ADHD. Not to mention I don't take my pills, so yeah. 30 minutes. Huh. Well, 31 minutes. One of these nights we were playing it and we decided to hide in a closet in the nursery. We hid there for about 10 minutes, and out of nowhere we heard a baby crying. We got spooked the fuck out and bolted out of there. In the morning, we went back to the nursery to see what could have caused it. We figured it was one of those toy baby dolls that would cry, but we found nothing. It still spooks me to this day, but I would give anything to relive it because I love paranormal shit. So do I, but no. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, trying not to press anything. Okay, so number 12 is called clapping. This one is a really short one, so. Played piano in a dark and empty auditorium back in the day. When I was finished, someone softly clapped for me. Sort of sounded like it was coming from everywhere, but just one person. Never saw them, and the auditorium was locked except for the door I came in. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh god, sorry about my hair. I haven't really been doing anything today. Not even my hair. It's okay. Number 13 is called Bad Connection. Oh my god, I'm so itchy. This was actually on Halloween morning one year. I lived in a small apartment with an open floor plan where you could see the entire apartment from the kitchen. I was in the kitchen packing my lunch to take to work when the TV turned on by itself. Volume on full blast to some staticky channel that kept cutting in and out. I was nowhere near the remote or the TV, and had no other people or animals living with me who could have done it accidentally. Probably not the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I'm sure there are many perfectly reasonable explanations as to how it happened, but it definitely freaked me out at the time. It had never happened before and hasn't since. Well, that's good, because yeah. Okay, number 14 is called "The Woman in the Middle of Nowhere." Okay, from now on, I'm gonna stop saying the numbers because I totally get I totally get um off track and I can't remember the numbers. So say the I'm just gonna say the titles and then read them and all that shit. The Woman in the Middle of Nowhere. Ah! Sorry guys, I just hate feeling itchy. I hate allergies. So allergy season is not my best friend. So yeah, not my best friend. No, for the love of. Okay. Oh my god. I feel like I'm not. Okay, never mind. I grew up in a small town and lived out in the country. My mom and I were coming home from Walmart really late one night and decided to take the back way home. I still had my learner's permit, so I wanted to take a road with less traffic. Anyone who has ever lived or been to the country knows how creepy these roads can be at night. I was going around a curve right before a one-lane bridge, so I slowed down in case I had to stop. Out of nowhere, this woman jumps in front of me to the driver's side of my car and starts pounding on the hood of my car. Her mouth was moving, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. My mom started freaking out and told me not to stop and just keep driving. I kept going and we both looked back to see where she was, and no one was there. To this day, my mom and I still remember it clearly. Turns out there's apparently a legend about a woman who died around the bridge and supposedly can be seen sometimes late at night. I get goosebumps to this day just thinking about it. Who turned on the radio? When I was about 10 or 12, I don't really remember. I had an odd experience. At the time, I was sharing a room with my sister. We had lofted beds and I slept on the top bunk. We had this stereo, and when you would press the button to turn it on, it would click and a red light would pop up. Our beds were on one side of the room and the stereo was on a desk on the opposite side. One night, I was woken up by the click sound that the stereo makes when the power button is pressed. I recognized the sound and sat up in bed. I looked over at the stereo and the light blinks on. I look over at my sister and she is fast asleep. Her bed was under mine but perpendicular, so I could see the top half of her from my bed. The stereo is playing that white noise sound it makes when it isn't on a specific station. Suddenly, I could hear someone saying "away" coming from the stereo. Just one word. Just one word. Away. First, it starts off soft and gradually gets louder until it becomes a yell. Away! 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 It took about 10-15 seconds probably to build up to the yell. And then it died back down to a whisper. I thought this was a dream. I was frozen out of fear. I thought this had to be my imagination, and I tried telling myself that during the whole thing, I had almost convinced myself of it until it stopped. After the voice died away, the stereo went back to static. Then I heard the familiar click and the light turned off. I was positive I wasn't dreaming. I was positive I wasn't dreaming the ending click. I stared at the stereo for a few more moments, too freaked to move. Looked back at my sister and saw she was still asleep, and finally laid back in bed. Covered myself with my sheets and willed myself back to sleep. I consider myself a rational person, but I had no rational explanation for this. Freakiest shit that has ever happened to me. Oh, my arm is. I'm on two different phones. Oh my god. Okay. Ow! Fudge. That was my shoulder that cracked. This is why you should never let anyone know where your spare key is. I was 17, still living in my parents' house. Everyone was away on a Friday night, so I had a few friends over. We smoked a little and were chilling in the basement playing video games. Two of my friends ran upstairs to get some snacks out of the pantry. After a few seconds, they came running down the steps yelling my name. They say somebody just pulled into my driveway. I hear the dog start freaking out. I panic, thinking my parents are home, and I scramble to hide the weed and pipe we had sitting next to the back door. I walked up the steps and looked out the window. There was no car in the driveway, but my dog was still freaking out. I went out I went outside to see if anyone was out there. It was late, almost midnight, and cold. I was barefoot and poorly dressed. I walked around my house, shivering and nervous, and found nothing. I went back inside, took my dog down to the basement with me, and tried to relax. Maybe 20 minutes later, we hear a huge crashing sound. It sounded like something had exploded right in front of the house. We ran outside through the back door and saw a car wrapped around a tree right by the road in my neighbor's front yard. My dog starts freaking out again. It was my brother's car. My brother had gone with my parents to my aunt's and left his car in the garage. I ran to look inside and there was nobody in it. I immediately called my brother, freaking out. When he answered the phone, I was both relieved and confused. He instructed me to call the police. He came home. The police came and looked around. They took statements from everybody. We hid the fact that we were high pretty well. As the tow truck was pulling my brother's car out of the front yard, the police received a call about a break-in down the street. They left an officer with us, and the rest left to respond to the call. It, it turns out that a group of people were going through my neighborhood, breaking into houses and stealing cars out of garages. I was in the house when the burglar stole my brother's car. I may have even walked right past him at one point. When they caught the group, one of the guys was injured, as if he had been in a car wreck. He was the one who had broken into my house. I knew him. He had graduated from my high school when I was a freshman. He had a house sat for us. He knew where we kept the spare keys. He knew that if one of us was home that the doors would be unlocked, and he waited until it was just me alone in the house. It wasn't paranormal, but still creeps me out to this day that the guy had waited for myself or any of my other family members to be alone in the house and had broken in. It scares me that I was so completely unaware of my surroundings back then that I would have let that guy get the drop on me if he had hostile intentions. It makes me sick that somebody we had trusted to stay in our house while we were gone would come back a couple years later and do something like that. There we go. Excuse me. Well, this one's short and to the point, but I have to. Mm. Oh my god. The night I spent with 20 dead bodies. Oh wow. Okay, the next one is gonna be really, really long, so. Oh, for the love of. Okay. I once had to work a very late shift at the funeral home to prepare a body for a viewing the following morning. I think I finally finished my work around midnight. Anyways, it was winter, and I ended up getting snowed in at the funeral home. I had to stay the night until plows came early AM to plow out. Let me tell you, it's fucking creepy sleeping in a funeral home knowing there are 20 dead people in the basement. Okay, this is gonna be really long, so I'm gonna just prepare you guys. Yeah, that's weird. Worth the long read. Two little girls were dancing in my bedroom. Oh my god. Okay, I'm probably gonna have to stop there because I'm getting really tired. And I do not want to spend the whole fucking night reading this long ass story. So, I'm gonna stop there and probably make a part 2 tomorrow, and then yeah. So if you liked this video, please like, comment, share, whatever. Um, Recommend me or whatever. Um, and I'm sorry I sound so stuffed up. It's just allergies and I really hate it. So, guys. So if you like this video, again, I strongly suggest like, comment, whatever you like. I will put the rest of the information in the description box, and and subscribe, click the notification box, click the notification bell beside the subscribe button so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. Sometimes it'll be reading, sometimes it'll be just random shit, sometimes it just whatever. But I don't even know if I'm looking into the camera right. Oh, for the love of Jesus. There we go. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, just do whatever the heck you can to get me noticed and to help me boost my channel up and to get me more confident in being on camera, because frankly I'm really camera shy, so I don't really like being on camera. But your interactions and your love will help me get over my fear of being on camera and be more camera savvy. So yeah. So just share me out and give me some criticism that isn't really harsh, and just help me get used to making videos, because I just don't know how to do videos as much as the editing part, and Um, yeah. So just, and I'll put some information in excuse me, into the description box, like my email if you want to submit some stories. Um, they can be That's Not Meat, they can be stalker, scary stories, scary social media stories, um, etc., etc. So if you have a story, just submit it to me, and I will I will do my best to put it in the video. Um. So yeah, and okay, so everyone have a good night, good morning, whatever. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.